Welcome dear students to Rayat Online School Education's 23rd lecture of Biology. Myself Professor P.B. Sargade from Sadhguru Gadge Maharaj College Karad, and this is our fourth lecture from the topic Human Health and Diseases. And in today's lecture we are going to study three important diseases: Ascariasis, filariasis or elephantiasis, and typhoid. Now let's start with the first disease, Ascariasis. What is Ascariasis? It is the infectious disease of human intestinal tract, and it is caused by a roundworm. The scientific name of this roundworm is Ascaris lumbricoides. This Ascaris lumbricoides is an endoparasitic roundworm of the human being. It is the nematode, and this Ascaris lumbricoides causes the disease. It infects the healthy human body. It enters inside the healthy human and infects the body, and ultimately the disease cause is called as Ascariasis. Now we'll move forward. The signs and symptoms of the Ascariasis: gastrointestinal discomfort, which is accompanied with the vomiting and fever. Now these are the signs and symptoms which we are studying. The presence of live worms in the fecal matter of the infected person. Now these are important signs and symptoms of the infection of Ascaris lumbricoides. Firstly, we have studied the gastrointestinal discomfort, which is caused to the patient or to the infected person, accompanied with vomiting and fever. The vomiting and fever are the another symptoms. The presence of live worms in the fecal matter, as well as the pulmonary disorders occur in some patients. These are rare cases. They are pneumonitis, that is the inflammation of alveolar wall. The alveolar wall, all of you know that the lungs have alveoli, and this alveoli, the wall of the alveoli, it is inflamed, and the condition is called as pneumonitis. Then the other symptoms are loss of appetite and weight loss. The eosinophilia, that is the number of eosinophils, is increased in the blood. All of you know that eosinophils are the part of WBCs, and their number in the blood is increased. And these signs and symptoms, they are found in the persons which are infected with the Ascaris lumbricoides. Now we will move forward. The modes of transmission of Ascaris lumbricoides in the human being. The food and drinks, it means the food and the water which we drink and other beverages we drink, if they are contaminated with the eggs of these worms, is the main mode of transmission. It means the unhygienic foods and drinks, if they are engulfed, if they are taken by the healthy people, the infection of Ascaris may occur. The eggs which are present or which are carried through the food and water, the eggs hatch inside the intestine of the new host. It means the eggs which enters inside the body, they hatch inside the body of the new host, particularly in the digestive tract, and the larvae pass through various organs and settle as adults in the digestive tract. Now this is the most important point, that the larvae which are produced after the hatching of the egg, they pass through various organs. Since their ultimate destination is the digestive system or the digestive tract of the healthy human being, the larvae pass through various organs and settle as adults in the digestive tract. Now in this diagram you are seeing that the children, they are playing in the soil, the children are playing in the garden, and their hands, they are contaminated with the soil and other things. This woman is washing the utensils in the dirty water. This boy is defecating in the open space. Now these are the modes of transmission. We will see in the next diagram the diagnosis and treatment. Now before diagnosis and treatment, we should know the life cycle of the Ascaris lumbricoides, how the Ascaris lumbricoides enters inside the healthy human person. Now in this diagram which is in front of you, here the eggs of the Ascaris lumbricoides, which are expelled through the infected person's fecal matter inside the soil, they get contaminated in the food and water bodies, and if they are swallowed by the human being or swallowed by the man, they enter inside the intestine. This diagram or the chart is in front of you, and through intestine they enter inside the bloodstream, they enter in the heart, they enter in the lungs, they enter in the trachea, they enter in the pharynx, and ultimately through the esophagus, the adult worms, they grow in the intestine, or they got attached themselves in the intestine, or they live in the intestine. And these adults, through the feces, their fertilized eggs are thrown to the defecation, through the process of defecation, again into the soil. Now this is the life cycle of Ascaris lumbricoides, or the cyclic manner by which the eggs of the Ascaris lumbricoides and the adult Ascaris lumbricoides, which is present inside the body of the human being. Now, what are the diagnostic and treatment features of this disease Ascariasis? The diagnosis can be done by microscopic examination of the stool. Since I have told you earlier that the Ascaris lumbricoides worms and the eggs, they are thrown out of the body through the process of defecation, and this stool which is defecated through the infected person's body, it is collected by the doctors in the laboratory, and it is diagnosed under the microscope, and the microscopic examination shows the presence of live worms and the eggs, and it shows that the person is infected with the Ascaris lumbricoides. Now what are the treatment methods of the Ascaris lumbricoides? Since Ascaris lumbricoides is a roundworm, there are so many drugs developed, and the modern treatment methods, they are invented in recent years. But the basic antihelminthic drugs like piperazine, mebendazole, levamisole, pyrantel are effective against the Ascaris lumbricoides. Now remember, these Ascaris lumbricoides, they are able to live inside the body of the human being because they have a cuticle-like coating all around their body. So the digestive juices which are present inside the digestive tract of the infected person, they cannot digest, or they cannot damage these Ascaris lumbricoides. So the antihelminthic drugs, they are used for the treatment of the Ascaris lumbricoides or Ascariasis. Now the disease is called as Ascariasis. We will move forward. The prevention and control of the Ascariasis. Now first, in the prevention and control, avoid defecation in open space. Because of the defecation in open space, if the infected person defecate his fecal matter in the open field, that defecated material got mixed with the soil. The eggs and the larvae, they got mixed in the soil, and through the food material and through the water bodies, they can again enter inside the healthy person's body. That we call it as fecal-oral route. Second, the personal hygiene habits like washing hands with water and soap after using the toilet. These hygienic practices keeps our hands clean, which are in contact when we are eating, and these personal hygienic practices are very important. The third, washing vegetables thoroughly before cooking and avoiding raw vegetables. if you brought the vegetables from the market, you should thoroughly wash these vegetables before cooking and avoid the vegetables, raw eating of the vegetables. Now, these are the prevention and control measures of the ascariasis. Here, the diagrammatic representation shows the primary prevention. The water supply should be clean. The potable water should be clean and hygienic. The food hygiene is also important, as well as health education is important in the younger generation, especially in the children's and the younger people. Then proper sanitation facilities, use of closed toilets, washing hands after the toilet with the hand sanitizer or with a good quality soap. These are the prevention and control measures in the ascariasis. Now we will move towards the next important disease. It is filariasis, or it is also called as elephantiasis. Now this filariasis is caused by thread-like worms, and these are nothing but the nematodes. These nematode parasites are transported from person to person via mosquito bite, and this filariasis can be divided into three subtypes. Remember, this is the fourth disease, filariasis or elephantiasis, and it is caused by the thread-like worms. We call them as nematodes, and these nematode parasites, they are transported from person to person via mosquito bite. The filariasis can be divided into three subtypes. The first is lymphatic filariasis. The second is subcutaneous filariasis. Example, Loa loa. This is the genus and species. Then Mansionella species. And the third type of filariasis, it is serous. It means in the abdominal cavity filariasis. Example, Mansionella species. The lymphatic filariasis, we will move towards the first type, lymphatic filariasis. It is also termed as elephantiasis, and it is caused by the worm or the nematode Wuchereria bancrofti, Brugia malai and Brugia timori. Now students, please remember these genus and species of various nematodes and various disease causing pathogens, because they are oftenly asked in the multiple choice questions in our exam and in our board exam, as well as in the NEET and other CET exams. Okay. The signs and symptoms of the filariasis or elephantiasis: there is edema with thickening of skin and underlying tissues. The skin shows thickening and underlying tissues show edema. Edema means, what is the meaning of edema? Edema means the accumulation of watery secretions or watery fluids under the skin. And because of this, the skin is thickened and the underlying tissue is swollen. And the Wuchereria bancrofti affects the legs, arms, breast and scrotum of the healthy person. And because of this infection, the legs, arms, breast and scrotum, they are enlarged in the tremendous size. In lymphatic filariasis, worms infect lymphatic system and causes enlargement of lymph vessels and nodes. Here, in lymphatic filariasis, the filarial nematode, it infects lymphatic system, which causes enlargement of lymph vessels and their nodes. This is elephantiasis, that is, limbs are swollen like legs of an elephant. Here, the limbs are swollen and they look like the legs of the elephant. The lymphedema, that is accumulation of lymph fluid in tissue, it is causing the swelling. Next, the hydrocele, that is testes are enlarged due to accumulation of lymphatic fluid in testes. Now here one point is to be noted that in these diseases, the watery secretions or the hydrocele, that is the testes are enlarged due to accumulation of lymphatic fluid in testes. And in other organs, the organs, they are swollen, and these organs looks like the limbs of the elephant. So the name to the disease is also called as elephantiasis. Now we will move forward. The modes of transmission. The Wuchereria bancrofti is transmitted by the female Culex mosquito. We have seen in malaria that the Plasmodium vivax, it is carried by the female Anopheles mosquito. As the same case is here, the Wuchereria bancrofti is transmitted by the female Culex mosquito. Here the species of the mosquito is different, but the female member of this mosquito family is responsible, or it is the vector for this Wuchereria bancrofti. The larvae escape mosquito body. The larvae then escape the mosquito body and arrive on the human skin. They penetrate the skin. These larvae, they penetrate the skin, undergo two moltings. The moltings are the process of growth, and it happens two times before they become adults, and they settle in the lymphatic system. Now remember, these adults, when they are formed, they settle in the lymphatic system. The incubation period can be as long as 8 to 16 months. Now this is very much important, because after the entry of the Wuchereria bancrofti inside the body of a healthy person, the incubation period can be as long as 8 to 16 months. It means after the entry of the Wuchereria bancrofti in the healthy human body, we can see the symptoms after 8 or 16 months. Now this is a very large amount of time required for the symptoms to appear. Now the next modes of transmission for the filariasis, the name of the nematode is Wuchereria bancrofti. Here a diagram is in front of you, and here the point number 1. In this point, the mosquito takes a blood meal. Now this is the female Culex mosquito having the L3 larvae stage inside her body, and this mosquito takes a blood meal. Now here the larvae, it enters inside the skin. Now this is shown in this diagram. Now this is the very infective stage. It enters inside the skin, and after in the human body, the larvae, it is developed into the adult, and it goes inside the lymphatics. Now these are the adults. This is the second stage, and after the development of the adults produce sheathed microfilariae that migrate into lymph and blood channels. The microfilariae having a sheathed or cover outside that body, it migrates into lymph and blood channels, and this is called as the diagnostic stage. From here, again, the mosquito takes a blood meal and ingests the microfilariae. Again, if the mosquito bites, it takes a blood meal, and along with the blood, it ingests the microfilariae. Again, this microfilariae goes inside the body of the mosquito, and this is the fifth stage. The microfilariae penetrate mosquito's midgut. The microfilariae goes inside the midgut of the mosquito and migrate to thoracic muscles. And after this, the larvae, L1 larvae is seen. After the two moltings, it is converted into L3 larvae, and again in this 8th stage, they migrate to head and mosquito's proboscis. It means they enter inside the proboscis of the female Culex mosquito, and again if the infected female or the vector female Culex mosquito bites to a healthy person, this entire cycle is repeated. Now this is a cyclic manner. Here one stage or one half-life of the Wuchereria bancrofti is passed inside the human body, and half-life is in the mosquito's body. So now this is the stages in the mosquito, and these are the stages in the human being. And by this way, the filarial worm, Wuchereria bancrofti, is transmitted. Next, the diagnosis and treatment. Now there are various treatments developed nowadays, but what are the basic diagnostic treatment we will see? Use of diethyl carbamazine citrate twice a day for 3 weeks. Now this is a chemically originated drug, diethyl carbamazine citrate twice a day for 3 weeks, and thereafter for 5 days every 6 months is effective against filarial worms. And the filarial worms, they are eradicated in a very systematic manner by administration of this drug. Now we will go towards the next point, prevention and control. Now what are the preventive and control measures of the filariasis? The first measure is avoid mosquito bite by using mosquito nets and insect repellents. Now we have seen this point in malaria also. Avoid the mosquito bite. The mosquito bite may contain, if there is Anopheles mosquito, it may cause malaria. If the female Culex mosquito, it may cause elephantiasis or filariasis. So avoid mosquito bite by using mosquito nets. And when you are going outside, use full clothes in order to prevent the mosquito bites. And you can use also insect repellents. Nowadays there are various vaporizer machines just like Goodnight, Mortein, and other liquid chemicals which evaporate and they repel the mosquitoes. So also there are various creams inside the market. When you apply those creams to your body, particularly to your face, limbs, it means hands and legs, the mosquitoes or the insects, they are repelled. So using these insect repellents, you can repel the mosquitoes. Now the second, prevention and control, eradication of mosquitoes is essential for control of filariasis. As discussed in the last lecture, we should eradicate the mosquitoes. Now in order to eradicate the mosquitoes, we have to get rid of the stagnant water where the mosquitoes lay their eggs on the water body. So these water bodies should be disrupted. So the mosquito colonies, they are eradicated, and the filariasis and other mosquito-borne diseases, they are controlled. Now we will move towards our third disease of this topic, and this third disease is typhoid. Now the typhoid is an acute infection of intestine. Now this is the infection of intestine, and it is caused by Salmonella typhi. This Salmonella typhi is responsible for the acute infection of intestine, and we call this condition as typhoid. Now it is a gram-negative bacteria which is found in intestinal lumen of infected person. It is a gram-negative bacteria which is found in the intestinal lumen of infected person. The pathogenicity is due to O antigen. It is a lipopolysaccharide, or it is also called as LPS, which is present on surface coat. The flagella contains H antigen. Now this is the diagram of the bacterium. Here in this diagram you can see a elongated body having flagella and a capsule. This capsule is oftenly called as K antigen or V in Salmonella. Then this is the somatic body, or it is called as O antigen or cell wall antigen, and this flagella, they are called as H antigen. So this is the diagram of the Salmonella typhi. The signs and symptoms of the typhoid, it is the prolonged fever which is seen in the infected person. The prolonged fever, it is as high as 104 degree Fahrenheit. Now all of you know that The normal human body temperature is 98.6 degree Fahrenheit or 37 degrees centigrade. So this much fever, 104 degree Fahrenheit, it is a very high fever and it is for a prolonged period. It is the sign of the typhoid. Now the second point is general nausea and fatigue and headache. Now these are the common symptoms of the typhoid. Nausea is caused to the infected person, then fatigue inside the body and a severe headache. The abdominal pain is also seen in the infected persons. Constipation or diarrhea may occur. The abdominal pain is very much severe in some cases. The constipation or the reverse condition, diarrhea, may occur inside the infected persons. Then rose-colored rash on the skin. The skin shows rose-colored, it means pink-colored rash on the skin. Then white coat on tongue and cough. You have observed your doctor how observed your tongue when you have visited the doctors. They observe your tongue. If there is a white colored coating on the tongue, it leads or it shows the infection by the typhoid causing bacteria. The white coat on the tongue and cough. Then anorexia, that means loss of appetite. The appetite of the infected person is lost because of the infection, and if not treated properly, it leads to the breathlessness. It means the person, they are infected with the bacterium, they show breathlessness, they are unable to breathe properly, irregular heartbeats, and because of that the heartbeats, they become irregular, and in some cases the hemorrhage occurs inside the body. The mode of transmission of the typhoid causing Salmonella typhi. First, it is a food and waterborne disease. Now all of us know that this Salmonella typhi, it is also carried through the agency of food and water. So it is a food and waterborne disease. The insects like housefly and cockroaches which are feeding on fecal matter may transfer the bacteria to food material. The housefly, all of you know that the housefly and cockroaches, they are present in the households, and if this housefly and the cockroaches, if they visit the fecal matter of the infected person, they carry the bacteria, they transfer the bacteria to food material, to the food material, and this food material, if it is engulfed, or the water body it is engulfed by the healthy person, the Salmonella typhi enters inside the healthy person. The poor hygiene habits and poor sanitation conditions are responsible for the spread of typhoid. Now, the government and the doctors and the research community is telling us every day that please keep the hygienic conditions properly, because the poor hygiene habits of the population and the people, they leads to the infection of various pathogens, bacteria, viruses, to the human beings. So poor hygiene habits and poor sanitation conditions are very much needed to eradicate various diseases, and these poor sanitation conditions are responsible for the spread of typhoid. The next point, diagnosis and treatment. In diagnosis, a very familiar test, it is called as Vidal test, is used for diagnosis of typhoid. Nowadays, various other techniques are also used by the scientific community for the diagnosis of various diseases, but the Vidal test is the best test in the diagnosis of typhoid. Now, what are the treatment measures? The treatment of typhoid involves surgical removal of gallbladder. Now, this is in severe cases. In severe cases, if the infection is severe, the condition of the patient is very critical, the gallbladder may be removed by surgical method. And this is not in all cases, but in severe cases, this method is applied. Now, the use of antibiotics like chloromycetin is helpful in the treatment of the typhoid. This chloromycetin is found effective for the treatment of typhoid. For prevention of typhoid, the WHO, it means World Health Organization, recommends two vaccines, and the name of these two vaccines are: the oral vaccine is TY21A vaccine. This is taken through the oral route, and the second type of vaccine, it is injectable, and that injectable vaccine is typhoid polysaccharide vaccine, and it is sold as the market name is Typhim-6 and Typhirix. Now, these are the labeling names of these vaccines, and they are injectable, and oral vaccines are available in the market, and by the use of these vaccines, the patient can be cured from the typhoid. Now, here we have completed 3 diseases in today's lecture, which are those: ascariasis, which is caused by Ascaris lumbricoides, then filariasis or elephantiasis, then the third disease, typhoid, which is caused by Salmonella typhi. Now, these 3 diseases are very much important when we consider the syllabus of the 12th biology. So now we'll stop here. Thank you, all of you.